everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know we love to dig into the stuff that really matters, and today we're tackling something super close to home for a lot of you: education.
It's a big one, right?
Yeah, and we're not just talking about the A.B.C.s and 123s. We're going deep into the philosophy and the approach of a specific school that's really turning heads: A.C.C. school.
And they've got this tagline that's pretty powerful, empowering minds, transforming lives.
Definitely ambitious. So you sent over a ton of material about them: articles, brochures, parent testimonials, the whole shebang. And I have to say, it's really got me thinking.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, just their mission statement alone really speaks volumes. They're not afraid to challenge the status quo, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's dive in. What exactly is it about ACC's approach that sets them apart? Because they're pretty vocal about not being satisfied with the traditional way of doing things.
Right from the get-go, they emphasize this idea of disrupting traditional education. And I think that's key because it shows they're not just tinkering around the edges. They're really aiming for a fundamental shift in how we think about learning and what it means to prepare kids for the future.
So when they talk about wanting to create independent thinkers, lifelong learners, and leaders, what does that actually translate to in the classroom? What would a parent see if they walked into an ACC classroom?
Well, one thing you'd notice right away is a focus on real-world skills. It's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about applying knowledge, solving problems, working collaboratively, things that kids will actually need out there in the real world.
Okay, so that's their big picture vision, but how do they actually make it happen? They throw around terms like visible learning and measurable output. It sounds impressive, but is it just fancy jargon, or is there real substance behind it?
Oh no, there's real substance there. They're big on data, actually, and they use it in a really smart way. They track progress very carefully, measuring specific skills and knowledge over time. So it's not just a feeling like, oh, I think my child is doing well. You actually have concrete evidence to back it up.
So as a parent, you're not just left wondering. You get a clear picture of where your child stands and how they're developing.
Exactly. And that kind of transparency is really empowering, both for the students and for the parents. You're all on the same page, working together towards a common goal.
I'm also intrigued by their emphasis on proficiency in listening and speaking. Seems like a no-brainer, right? But they really elevate communication to a core skill, almost like a superpower.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in many traditional settings, communication skills are treated as secondary. Like, oh, you'll pick that up along the way. But ACC recognizes that those skills are fundamental to success, not just in school, but in life.
So how do they go about developing those skills? They mention a proficiency gauge system. Sounds kind of like a video game almost.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, actually. They have this structured framework with different levels, from 1 to 9, so it's a way to track progress in those specific areas: listening and speaking, and make sure that kids are consistently building those skills over time.
So it's not just hoping they'll absorb it through osmosis. There's a deliberate curriculum designed to cultivate those skills.
Exactly, and I think that's really important, especially in today's world where communication is everything. Whether you're working on a team, presenting an idea, or just trying to connect with people, those skills are absolutely crucial.
Now, one of the things that really stood out to me in their materials was this concept of cultivating independent, lifelong learners. Like, that's the holy grail of education, isn't it? But how do you actually teach someone to become a self-directed learner?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And I think a lot of it comes down to instilling a sense of ownership and agency in students. It's about making them active participants in their own learning, not just passive recipients of information.
So how does that play out in practice at ACC? What are they doing differently?
Well, for one thing, they really focus on helping kids understand the why behind what they're learning. It's not just about memorizing facts, but about seeing the relevance, the connections to the real world.
Yeah.
And that kind of understanding can be really motivating for kids.
Because they're not just doing busy work, they can see the point.
Exactly. And ACC also does a great job of equipping kids with the tools and strategies they need to learn independently. So it's not just about being told what to learn, but about learning how to learn, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's interesting because they talk about empowered teachers, empowered learners. So it's not just the students who are being empowered, it's the teachers too. What does that look like in the school culture?
Well, there's a real emphasis on professional development for teachers. ACC wants their teachers to be constantly learning and growing, which creates a really dynamic environment for everyone.
So the teachers are modeling that lifelong learning mindset for the students.
Exactly. And they also encourage teachers to be really reflective about their teaching, to think about what's working, what's not, and to be open to new ideas and approaches.
It sounds like there's a lot of collaboration and shared learning going on.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things that makes ACC so special. There's this real sense of community, of everyone working together towards a common goal.
Now, we have to talk about experiential learning because it seems to be at the heart of everything ACC does. But what exactly is it? Because experiential learning can mean a lot of different things.
Well, at its core, it's about learning by doing. It's about moving beyond textbooks and lectures and getting kids actively involved in the learning process.
So it's not just sitting in a classroom listening to someone talk at you.
No, it's much more hands-on. It could be anything from conducting experiments in a science lab to working on a real-world project to going on field trips that connect to what they're learning in the classroom.
I love what they call it learning by doing. Makes it sound so much more engaging than just learning.
Right. And they've identified some key features of experiential learning that I think are really insightful.
Okay, let's break them down.
First, you have the learning by doing aspect, which is pretty self-explanatory. But then, crucially, there's reflection. It's not just about having an experience, but about taking the time to process it, think about what you learned, and how you can apply that learning in other situations.
So there's a deliberate effort to make those connections between theory and practice.
Exactly. And then there's real-world application, which is all about helping kids see how what they're learning connects to the world outside of school.
And that's so important, isn't it? Because sometimes, kids are sitting there in class thinking, when am I ever going to use this in real life?
Right. But when they can see those real-world connections, it just makes the learning so much more meaningful.
And finally, there's collaboration.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most things in life aren't done in isolation. We have to work with other people.
Absolutely. And experiential learning provides so many opportunities for kids to collaborate, to work together towards a common goal, to communicate their ideas, and to learn from each other.
So what are the tangible benefits that parents can expect to see from this kind of experiential learning approach? What's the payoff?
Well, ACC really highlights 4 key benefits. First, kids develop a deeper understanding of the subject matter. It's not just rote memorization, it's real, integrated knowledge.
Because they've actually experienced it, not just read about it.
Right. And second, they develop important skills, not just the technical skills related to the subject matter, but also those all-important soft skills like communication, problem solving, and teamwork.
Those are the skills that employers are always looking for.
Exactly. And third, experiential learning tends to be much more engaging for kids. They're more motivated, more interested, and more likely to retain what they're learning.
Because it's fun. It's not just drudgery.
Right. And finally, it fosters personal growth. Kids gain confidence, they develop critical thinking skills, and they become more independent and self-directed.
So it's not just about academics, it's about developing the whole child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes ACC's approach so powerful. It's really holistic.
Now, one of the things that really impressed me about ACC is their emphasis on partnership with parents. It's not just about dropping your kid off at school and hoping for the best. They really want parents to be actively involved in the learning process.
Absolutely. They believe that education is a shared responsibility, and they do a lot to facilitate that partnership.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, for one thing, they have these interactive workshops for parents. It's not just your typical parent-teacher conference. It's more like a collaborative brainstorming session where parents and teachers can share ideas and strategies and work together to support the child's learning.
I love that. It's so much more proactive and engaging than just sitting there listening to a report card.
And ACC also does a great job of communicating with parents regularly, keeping them informed about what's happening in the classroom, and providing opportunities for feedback and input.
So it's a true partnership where parents feel like they're part of the team.
Exactly. And I think that's so important for kids to know that their parents and teachers are all on the same page, all working together to support them.
Now, when you look at the big picture, at ACC's ultimate goals for their students, what stands out to you? What kind of individuals are they trying to cultivate?
Well, they talk a lot about wanting to create independent, lifelong learners who are ready to make an impact.
That's a pretty tall order, right?
It is, but I think it's also incredibly inspiring. They're not just focused on getting kids into college or getting them a good job. They're really thinking about the long term, about equipping kids with the skills and the mindset they need to thrive in a rapidly changing world.
And that's where the emphasis on visible learning comes in, right? Making sure that progress is tangible and measurable.
Exactly. They want to see concrete evidence that kids are developing those critical skills, that they're becoming problem solvers, that they're able to work collaboratively, and that they're developing a passion for learning that will last a lifetime.
Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about ACC's facilities, because from what I've seen, they're pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, they've got some state-of-the-art stuff going on there. A cutting-edge computer lab, a purpose-built campus. They're even powered by a solar system.
Wow, talk about walking the walk when it comes to sustainability.
Right, and they really emphasize safety and cleanliness too, which I think is so important for parents. You want to know that your child is in a nurturing and secure environment.
Absolutely. And they also talk about providing personal attention every step of the way. So it's not just about the fancy facilities, it's about the human connection.
Right, and I think that's a really important point because at the end of the day, education is all about people. It's about relationships, it's about mentorship, and it's about creating a supportive community where everyone can thrive.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into ACC school, I think it's safe to say that they're doing some really innovative and exciting things. They're challenging the status quo, they're pushing the boundaries of traditional education, and they're really putting kids at the center of everything they do.
I completely agree. And I think their motto, empowering minds, transforming lives, really captures the essence of their approach.
They're not just preparing kids for tests or for college applications, they're preparing them for life. And that's something that I think every parent can get behind.
Absolutely. And if you're a parent who's looking for something different, something more for your child's education, I highly encourage you to check out A.C.C. School.
Yeah, I second that. They're definitely worth a closer look. And as we leave you today, we want to leave you with this question. What if education could be more than just about acquiring knowledge? What if it can be about empowering kids to become the best versions of themselves, to embrace their passions, to think critically, to solve problems, and to make a real difference in the world?
That's a powerful thought. And I think it's something that A.C.C. School is truly striving for.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.